The city of Olorun-Ila was a goddess of chrome and ambition, her skyline a jagged crown against the dawn. On the penthouse balcony of the tallest tower, Kofi Mensah, the Leopard of Tech, watched the sunrise bleed gold across the glass. At 35, he had built an empire from code and cunning, a financial technology giant that empowered millions. He wore his wealth like his tailored etro jacket, effortlessly, but with undeniable presence. Yet, as the city awakened below him, Kofi felt a silence within his own walls that all the noise of the metropolis could not fill. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass showed a man who had everything and owned nothing that truly mattered. The women in his life were like exquisite accessories. Adana, the fashion icon, whose love was as curated as her Instagram feed, a performance of affection that scaled with the price of his gifts. Shawnee, his chief of staff, sharp as a razor, whose ambition was a cold, hard thing she wielded like a weapon, seeing his empire as a ladder for her own ascent. Later, in his minimalist office, the scent of outwood and anxiety hanging in the air, Kofi scrolled through the news. Another young tech founder had been ruined by a scandal, his trust betrayed by those closest to him. A deep, ancestral warning, a voice that sounded like his late grandmother's, whispered in his soul. She had told him stories of the Sankofa, bird, which flies forward while looking backward, carrying the wisdom of the past into the future. He realized he was surrounded by beautiful masks, but he had forgotten how to see the faces beneath. That evening, standing before a gold-framed portrait of his grandmother, her eyes seeming to hold the depth of 1,000 forest nights, an idea, a test, was born. It was not born of malice, but of a desperate thirst for truth. He would call it the Sankofa trial. He would give 3 women a key to his kingdom, not to see if they would take it, but to see what they would build or destroy with its power. His security chief, a man named Ekon whose loyalty was as immutable as the ancient rocks of Zuma, was given a simple, solemn instruction. Watch, do not interfere. Show me the truth of their hearts. Adana received the black card at a rooftop lounge, the city lights shimmering like a spilled diamond necklace below. She was a vision in a fiery orange Christopher John Rogers dress, her laughter a weapon of mass admiration. When Kofi handed her the envelope, her eyes, lined with coal, did not just sparkle. They ignited with a hungry fire. "Babe, for real?" she exclaimed, kissing him with a passion that felt like a transaction. "This is the anniversary gift I dreamed of." She didn't ask why. She was already filming an unboxing story, her voice a sugary crescendo. Blessed my leopard, chart no limits. Within hours, her spending was a public spectacle. A custom Bentley, a private shopping spree in Milan via holographic call, a necklace of Zambian emeralds that cost more than a city block. Each purchase was a brick in the fortress of her image, a shrine to her own magnificence. Kofi watched the reports from Ekon, his heart growing colder with each update. Adana was in her element, a queen holding court in the Temple of Commerce. But then came a video clip from a high-end boutique. Adana, trying on a jacket, snapped at the young shop assistant, a girl from the mainland with hopeful eyes, for being too slow. "Useless girl," Adana had sneered, her voice dripping with a venom that chilled Kofi to the bone. "Do you know who I am? You move like you have nowhere to be." The assistant had shrunk, her dream of a better life in the city cracking under the weight of Adana's contempt. In that moment, Kofi didn't just see vanity. He saw a cruel spirit, one that would trample the dreams of others to polish its own. Reflection. She was building a palace of self-love on a foundation of sand. Shani, ever the strategist, received the card in his office with a calibrated nod. Dressed in a sharp, custom-made suit from a rising Lagos designer, she was the picture of modern efficiency. "This is unexpectedly generous, Kofi," she said, her voice even, but a new light in her eyes betrayed her excitement. She saw the card not as a gift, but as a tool. Her spending was a masterclass in tactical advancement. She hired a renowned media coach from South Africa, booked a speaking slot at a Davos-like summit in Kigali, and made strategic donations to the philanthropic boards of the continent's most powerful families. She was networking, building her own brand of influence using the credibility his wealth afforded her. Econ's report included an audio recording from a secret meeting she held with a rival tech firm, Ajay Labs. Kofi is brilliant, but sentimental. Shani's voice was calm, betraying no guilt. His vision is my vision, of course, but one must plan for all eventualities. My loyalty is to the future of African tech. She was selling his secrets, positioning herself as the logical successor, the cold, hard mind needed to steer the company into a more ruthless future. Kofi felt a betrayal far deeper than Adana's shallow cruelty. This was a calculated dissection. She wasn't just using him. She was planning to eclipse him, to cannibalize his life's work, and present it as her own. Evolution. The leopard was being hunted by one he had fed at his own table. The third card was left on the small, neat desk of Amara, his live-in chef and nutritionist. She found it beside a fresh bunch of plantains. Amara was from a riverine village in the Niger Delta and carried the quiet grace of the water and the stubborn strength of the earth. When she approached Kofi, her hands, still dusted with spice, held the envelope as if it were a sacred, dangerous artifact. "Sir, there must be a mistake." Her voice was soft, laden with worry. Kofi assured her it was a token of gratitude. She took it with a troubled expression, not of joy, but of burden. For 2 days, Econ reported nothing. No lavish purchases, no flights, no bookings. Kofi began to wonder if she had discarded it. Then the reports trickled in. Amara had taken a bus to the mainland. She had paid the annual school fees for all the children in her cousin's compound, their uniforms and books included. She had visited the Underbridge Coding School, a grassroots initiative for street kids, and paid for a year's rent for their single room, buying them 10 new laptops. The final report was a grainy photo. Amara, in a simple Ankara wrap, was sitting on an upturned crate in a dusty courtyard, sharing a meal of jollof rice and chicken with a group of elderly women, listening intently to their stories. She wasn't just giving money. She was giving presence. She was investing in the invisible threads of community that held people together. She saw the card not as a key to a new life, but as water for a parched garden. Kofi stared at the image, and for the first time in years he felt a genuine emotion stir in his chest. Not desire, not ambition, but a profound, humbling respect. Kofi summoned them to his penthouse on a night when a tropical storm lashed against the windows. The city lights blurred into weeping stars. The air was thick with the scent of rain and expensive perfume. Adana arrived in a dramatic, rain-splashed gown, complaining about the weather ruining her hair. Shani was crisp and composed, already checking her watch for her next meeting. Amara stood near the door, as if ready to leave, her simple dress a quiet rebellion against the opulence. Kofi did not mince words. He laid bare the Sankofa trial. He spoke of the tracked purchases, the recorded conversations, the observed actions. Adana's beautiful face contorted in rage. "You spied on me? You disgusting pig! After everything I've done for you?" She called him insecure, pathetic, a small man hiding behind his money. Shani's reaction was icier. She stood, smoothing her suit, a faint, contemptuous smile on her lips. "A test, Kofi? How primitive. I thought you were a visionary, not a village elder seeking purity. My ambitions have always been clear. You just didn't want to see them. This trial only proves you're afraid of a woman who can match your strength." She turned to Amara. "And you've chosen the quiet little mouse. How predictable. The billionaire's guilt assuaged by a peasant's simplicity. Enjoy your fairy tale." Her exit was silent and final, a door closing on a chapter of his life. The confrontation was over, but the storm within Kofi was just beginning. He had sought truth, and its weight threatened to crush him. Kofi summoned them to his penthouse on a night when a tropical storm lashed against the windows. The city lights blurred into weeping stars. The air was thick with the scent of rain and expensive perfume. Adana arrived in a dramatic, rain-splashed gown, complaining about the weather ruining her hair. Shani was crisp and composed, already checking her watch for her next meeting. Amara stood near the door, as if ready to leave, her simple dress a quiet rebellion against the opulence. Kofi did not mince words. He laid bare the Sankofa trial. He spoke of the tracked purchases, the recorded conversations, the observed actions. Adana's beautiful face contorted in rage. "You spied on me? You disgusting pig? After everything I've done for you?" She called him insecure, pathetic, a small man hiding behind his money. Shani's reaction was icier. She stood, smoothing her suit, a faint, contemptuous smile on her lips. "A test, Kofi? How primitive. I thought you were a visionary, not a village elder seeking purity. My ambitions have always been clear. You just didn't want to see them. This trial only proves you're afraid of a woman who can match your strength." She turned to Amara. "And you've chosen the quiet little mouse. How predictable. The billionaire's guilt assuaged by a peasant's simplicity. Enjoy your fairy tale." Her exit was silent and final, a door closing on a chapter of his life. The confrontation was over, but the storm within Kofi was just beginning. He had sought truth, and its weight threatened to crush him. However, his actions had awakened a vengeful spirit. Shani, humiliated and enraged, had fully aligned with Ajay Labs. She knew all his company's secrets, its vulnerabilities. She launched a devastating corporate attack, a hostile takeover bid, fueled by the secrets she had gathered. At the same time, Adana, leveraging her massive following, began a smear campaign, painting Kofi as an unstable manipulator who preyed on women. The media, hungry for scandal, feasted on the story. Kofi's empire, built on trust and innovation, began to teeter. The walls were closing in, and his newfound peace was shattered. The past he had tried to uncover was now being used as a weapon to destroy his future. Kofi fought back with every resource, but the attacks were multifaceted. Shani used her insider knowledge to poison investor confidence, while Adana's social media army painted him as a villain. The board of directors, nervous about the plummeting stock price, demanded his resignation. Kofi felt the ground shifting beneath him. The very empire he had built was becoming his prison. In a moment of despair, he stood again on his balcony. But now the city lights seemed like accusing eyes. He wondered if his quest for truth had been a fatal error. At his lowest point, as his board of directors pressured him to step down, Amara took him to see an old, blind seer who lived in a house built on stilts over the Lagos lagoon. The old man listened to Kofi's troubles, his milky eyes seeing things in a different light. "The leopard is strongest not when it attacks," the seer whispered, his voice like the rustling of palm leaves. "But when it is cornered. You have been looking for an enemy outside, but the greatest battle is the one within. Your strength is your community, not your code. Let the river flow." The words were a cryptic key. That night, Kofi had a dream of his grandmother, who pointed, not to his computer, but to the laughing faces of the children from the Underbridge coding school. He awoke with a jolt. He knew what he had to do. The next day, instead of fighting Shani's takeover with lawyers and threats, Kofi did the unthinkable. He called a public press conference. He stood before the world and did not defend himself. Instead, he confessed. He spoke of his loneliness, his Sankofa trial, and its painful, illuminating results. He admitted his methods were wrong, but his quest for authenticity was not. Then he announced he was ceding majority control of his company. But he wasn't giving it to Shawnee or Aja Labs. He was transforming it into the first ever worker and community-owned tech giant in Africa. The shares would be held in a trust for his employees and the grassroots initiatives Amara supported. He was not surrendering. He was evolving. He was becoming a river. The move was seen as madness by the business world, but as genius by the people. Public support swung violently in his favor. Shawnee's takeover bid collapsed under the weight of his authenticity. Adana's smear campaign backfired, making her look shallow and cruel. Kofi, freed from the burden of his empire, partnered with Amara to build the Sankofa Foundation, an organization that funded technology and education rooted in African values. They traveled together to remote villages, bringing internet connectivity and digital literacy programs, always listening first to the needs of the people. Kofi found a new purpose in these journeys, his tech skills now serving a higher cause. Back in Olorin Isla, the Sankofa Foundation became a beacon. The very children from the Underbridge Coding School now had a path to careers in tech. The elderly women Amara had fed became the foundation's advisory council on community projects. Kofi's penthouse was sold, and he moved into a spacious, airy home in the mainland with a large garden where Amara grew herbs and vegetables. The house was always filled with people, artists, thinkers, activists, all collaborating on ways to build a more humane future. Kofi had never felt richer. Years passed. The scandal faded from memory, replaced by the tangible good of the Sankofa Foundation. Kofi and Amara, now deeply in love, decided to marry. Their wedding was not a lavish spectacle, but a vibrant celebration in the heart of the community. It was held in a large open field decorated with colorful African prints and flowers from local gardens. The guests were a mosaic of their lives: family from the village, tech innovators, market traders, and the children they had helped. The music was a fusion of traditional drums and modern Afro beats, symbolizing the harmony of old and new. As they exchanged vows under a canopy of woven palm leaves, Kofi spoke from the heart. "I spent my life building walls to protect myself, only to find I was the prisoner inside. You, Amara, taught me that true strength is in tearing down walls and building bridges." Amara, radiant in a simple but elegant dress made by a local designer, replied, "You taught me that a river needs both banks to flow. Together, we can nurture the entire valley." Their kiss was met with joyous ululations and applause. It was more than a marriage. It was the culmination of a journey back to themselves. The foundation flourished, becoming a model for social enterprise across the continent. Kofi and Amara were invited to speak at global forums, but they always centered their message on African wisdom, the concept of Ubuntu. I am because we are. They had a daughter, whom they named Neka. Mother is supreme, after Kofi's grandmother. Neka grew up surrounded by love and purpose, learning to code almost as soon as she could walk, but also learning the names of every plant in her mother's garden and the stories of every elder in their community. One evening, as Kofi was telling Neka a bedtime story about the Sankofa bird, she asked, "Papa, did you really used to live in a sky castle?" Kofi laughed, a warm, full-bodied sound that filled the room. "I did, my love, but it was empty. This house with you and your mother is where the real treasure is." Amara entered, carrying a tray of tea, and joined them. The family sat together, a portrait of contentment. Kofi realized that his greatest achievement was not a company or a foundation, but this simple, profound happiness. The story ends at the annual New Yam Festival in Olorin Ile, a celebration of harvest and renewal. The city was alive with music, dance, and the smell of roasting corn and spicy suya. Kofi and Amara, now in their 40s, were guests of honor. As they danced in the streets, surrounded by laughing children and grateful communities, Kofi caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd: Shawnee, watching from a distance. She was alone, dressed in a severe business suit, her face a mask of regret. Their eyes met for a moment, and she gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod before turning away. Adana, he heard, had faded into obscurity, her influence washed away by the tides of time. Kofi felt no bitterness, only pity. He turned back to Amara, whose smile was as bright as the sun. He held her close as the drums beat, a rhythm that felt like the heart of Africa itself. The gilded leopard had paid his debt not with gold, but with grace. And in doing so, he had found a wealth that no empire could ever provide. A legacy of love, woven into the very fabric of a community that would endure for generations. The Sankofa bird had flown, and he had finally learned to look back without regret, moving forward with wisdom.